So without further ado, I get a chance to talk to my good friend of the Quality Life Center, Mr. Abdul Muhammed. Welcome to the show, Abdul.
Thank you, Lee.
It's good to get you here. Most people know you as Mr. Muhammad, but we get you here for a special reason this time. We know that you're always out and doing a lot of things to promote other people and to help other people. But when we were looking at individuals in the community in terms of profiling for Black History Month, as it relates to our youth, your name was on the top of the list, and I was glad that you were selected for that particular cause. Now, as it relates to Black History Month, one of the things we do here on the show is we often emphasize that Up Close is not a show that's just significant during the February month for Black history, but we like to see Up Close as a show that shows the positive development and contributions of African Americans over the long period of time. In other words, Up Close celebrates Black history every day of the year. And you being a person who's well versed in that area, what's your take on the whole significance of Black History Month?
Well, I think Black history is extremely significant. I would prefer, however, to say African American History Month or Heritage Month, but it's very significant. As we know, it has its origin with Dr. Carter G. Woodson, who was a great intellectual many years ago that founded Black History Week. And as a result, over the years, it had become Black History Month. For those who participate and recognize the great contributions made by African Americans, recognize that this is a period of time of knowledge that we have to interweave in our everyday life, because this is a part of our culture. It's us.
Now, when you look back at Black history, and all of us do from time to time in your studies, what significant figure in Black history and to your liking most inspired you to where you are today?
I think there are many. It's really hard to mention just one, but I know that there have been certain ones who have had a great impact in my personal life. But when we talk about the figures in history, Carter G. Woodson, again, is a great intellect. W.E.B. Du Bois, for his intellect and academic pursuits and motivating African Americans to really challenge the intellectual arena. Booker T. Washington, who had established institutions, and that's very valuable to me, because I think as a people, it's important that we just not have rhetoric, but that we have people who recognize the importance of establishing institutions, something that's going to be there long after you're gone. In my personal life, I was inspired by Elijah Muhammad and his work, and he was an institutional builder as well. And later on, his son, Warith D. Muhammad. These were Muslims. These were people who challenged the injustices of America and were inspiring to African Americans who at that time were hopeless. And his son, who is currently on the scene, has been very inspirational from a theological or religious perspective in the area of Islam. So there are many. And of course, Malcolm, with his stirring oratory and his challenge of injustice in America. I can go down the line. Benjamin Mays. We can talk about Barbara Jordan, the sister who just passed. There are many.
Now, you mentioned a couple of good points, and well, not that all of them weren't good, but let me try to tie this up a little tighter here. Now, one of the things that you brought out is that you could go down the line in terms of naming significant people in African American history, not only who have impacted your life, but have impacted the progress that Blacks have been able to make in this country over the years. And that's a good point that you make, because there's so many people that have done significant things, yet the vast majority of African Americans do not know about these people. My question to you is, how do you see that lack of education being improved amongst African Americans about the contributions that individuals have made, and what importance does that make anyway, that they know that certain Blacks have made a significant contribution to society?
It's extremely important. As we look in our educational institutions today around the world, I do take my hat off for some of the efforts that are being made. In Lee County, I know they're making efforts soon to have what is called multiculturalism or cultural diversity integrated into the curriculum, but it hasn't gotten there yet. But historically, as you know, African Americans have been left out. And most children growing up in America, myself included, would learn that the African Americans were slaves, and then it would jump from slavery to Dr. King, and we shall overcome. And there was no real sense of awareness about what contributions African Americans have played, such as a Benjamin Banneker who laid out and surveyed Washington, D.C., who constructed the first clock in America, or Dr. Hale Williams and Dr. Daniels, who created or produced the blood plasma, Dr. Hale Williams, who performed the first successful open heart surgery. We can go on and on about the contributions of African Americans.
Okay.
This gives pride.
Right. That's the point. Now, the fact that you think there's a significant correlation, particularly with our youth, the fact that if they know about their heritage and the positive things about their heritage, that pride stems over into other positive things. Why don't you elaborate on that?
Exactly. In other words, young people, like anybody else, learn by seeing. We learn by what we see in front of us, our role models. And of course, the first ones are our parents, and that's important. And unfortunately, many of us in the community do not have that positive role model. However, when you see African Americans doing great things like George Washington and Edison, and how people of the majority community can gain a sense of pride when an African American see a Lee Pitts, see a Dr. Hale Williams, see a Dr. King, see a Malcolm, see great inventors, then they begin to realize that, man, I can do that too. I can be like them also. And that gives them a sense of not only hope, but it recognizes that they can be that and they can accomplish things just like they have.
Now, and you made some really good points. So let's go back a bit to what you actually do now. You're the director of the Quality Life Center here in Southwest Florida, which is a well-respected youth organization that is its primary mission is to the development of our youths in our community, intellectually, athletically, cultural awareness, and so on and so forth. This organization is a testament about the fortitude that you have, along with the other people who work with you, and bringing it up since 1991 with no financial contributions, mostly volunteers. Now it's risen to a level where it's beginning to be more stable, more recognized in the community. What has driven you to produce such an organization such as the Quality Life Center?
I don't know, Lee. There are many contributing factors, I would think. But one, I think that many of us, like yourself, are committed to helping young people and committed to making our community a better community. We're just committed to that. Somewhere along the line, our parents taught us something, a teacher taught us something, we learned some particular value that said that not only must we receive from the community, we have to give back, and we have to just make a commitment. And somewhere along the line, I got that message. And as a result, our community is important. And our community needs people. It needs people who are concerned and are ready to contribute and give something back to society.
Now, one of the things that I mentioned in the Quality Life Center program was the fact that it has a cultural awareness component in terms of its overall education of individuals. Now, one of the things I'll bring out is that there's no religious component there. Some people may have a misconception that there is a religious component there, but there is a cultural awareness component. Now, you mentioned earlier that you don't like to you would rather see it as African American History Month instead of Black History Month. Let's talk about the word Negro. We evolved from in terms of the history here in this country, from Negroes to colored people to blacks to Afro-American to African-American, and so on and so forth, to the point now that it's beginning to be very confusing, and many people are wondering why can't Negroes or blacks or African-Americans or colored people decide on one particular name that is best to identify them by. You said that you like to see it as African-American history. Why is that as opposed to Black History Month?
Well, one of the things we should understand is that African-American people in this country are evolving from a point of view of being identified or labeled by someone else. And now as the conscience begins to raise among African-American people, they begin to define themselves for who they are rather than someone else defining them. And that's the evolution from Negro or nigger to black to African-American. And just hopefully one day, Lee, we wouldn't even have to use these kinds of descriptions or language, and we would just simply be people, human beings. And we can recognize the value of our heritage, but at the same time, what is important is, as Dr. King said, is the content of our character. That's what's really important.
But we both know that it's been over 400 years now, and that still hasn't come about. So in a utopia society, we may expect that one day we wouldn't have to use those particular types of labor. But here in this country, in America, people still are identified by their race, and it could be to advantage or disadvantage in the way America labels people. Now, you got a chance to travel abroad doing your business endeavors over the years. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your experience there as it relates to race relations, and then when you came back to this country?
Well, I think people all over the planet are experiencing cultural challenges in various ways. And my experience in Africa, North and West Africa, folks are not so hung up with whether I'm black or not, because those kinds of issues doesn't exist as it exists in America, with African Americans evolving out of the slave period and evolving out of misidentification and miseducation to the point where there is an importance to define ourselves for who we are. However, we should recognize that as African American people, we're made up of people from all over the planet. That's the reality. There are many of us who have European blood in us. We have Asian blood. I mean, we're a mixture. African American people are made up of many different hues.
As you look at what's happening here locally, when I say locally here in Southwest Florida, and particularly in the Lee County area, race relations, it comes up, it goes down, there's talk about it. What's your take on the current state of race relations here in this area?
Well, I think that there's a long way to go, obviously. I think there was a gentleman who was on the faculty of Lehigh High School that wrote a commentary in the news press last Sunday that spoke about the discrimination in the areas of purchase, automobiles, insurance, and other kinds of things that shows the clear disparity between justice, or the disparity between people of color being given a fair deal as people of the majority community. So race relations obviously has a way to go, but I would suggest that African Americans put more emphasis as to not what other people think of them, but to put more emphasis in the development of ourselves.
You know, there's one thing I heard you say that stuck in my mind. One time I had the privilege of interviewing you on radio, and we were talking about the James Brown song about I don't want nobody to give me nothing, open up the door and I'll get it myself. And then you said that you would take that a little farther. Why don't you elaborate on that?
Well, I think James Brown played a key role in the 60s by that type of song and other things that he said. But also, we don't need anyone to open up the door. In the African American community, there's the intelligence to make the door. There's the intelligence to produce the doorknob. There's the intelligence to open it ourselves. And I think when we recognize that we're just as capable as a people as anyone else is, and to not have this unnatural dependency and a false expectation for someone to do something for us, then we'll find that we'll begin to move and make greater progress. And I think when the value of an individual is excelled or is raised, then other people will appreciate you for what you are, and what hue or color you may be becomes not very important. It's your quality. It's what you have to offer. It's what you are providing for humanity, and that's what's important. And I think we're over-exaggerating and preoccupied with this issue of race in America today. We need to focus on accomplishing and achieving, like our parents used to tell us.
That's right.
We got to work extra hard in order to be an achiever, and we need to put more emphasis on excellence as opposed to wondering what other people think of us.
Now let's talk a little bit about, when you talk about excellence, one of the things that comes to mind is education. And you having one of the premier youth development programs in the area, the Quality Life Center. One of the challenges that face all of our youth here in Lee County, you and I both got a chance to take a look at some of the startling statistics in terms of the test scores that minority students are making on their SATs and their ACTs compared to white students. There's a significant disparity in terms of the score, in that blacks are scoring so much lower than the white students, particularly in elementary school and in middle school. as well as high school. And the challenge is to bring those grades up, to bring those scores up. As you work with these youth, how do you see African American children and their parents being able to change this trend, which is going to definitely put us in an even lower economic status and social status in society as we move into the year 2000?
It's a good question, Lee. I think number one, we have to connect with good leadership. We have to recognize that too many of our quote leaders has responded and reacted to solutions or to problems that have not elevated us, but has caused us to just remain in flux in many cases. This program is not long enough to really go into that in detail, but I think that it's important that some of the old value systems that our great parents, great grandparents, and our parents had spoken about is where we need to go, and that is that you must teach your children. A bird parent does not allow his bird child to be educated by another animal or another bird. The bird parent takes care of its children. That's the responsibility. And too many of our parents have drifted away from that acknowledgement. And we know why. We know that there are many social implications, economic implications, but we have to return to those basic fundamentals and not allow our children to be educated by someone who don't know what they're educating.
Okay, let's stay with that, because you raised some good points. Let's talk about the Lee County school systems. One of the things that you get the opportunity to do, as well as myself, I visit about 20 schools a year. You get a chance to travel to some of the schools. You get a chance to talk to some of the minority students. What do you say? How do you see their attitudes towards education now as you move about?
Well, I think that there are some very positive efforts on the way, and at the same time, we're working against some old ideas about methods, on old ideas, mindsets about what people are all about, and we have to be able to overcome those. But the point that I'm trying to say is basic and it's fundamental, and that is that your children, you educate. You don't leave the education and the future of your children to someone else, you see. And I think that when the community begins to value and understand the importance of its role, that we have to provide that education and that educational environment, that safety in our own communities, then we're going to see something very different come about. We just can't send our children off and think that they're going to be taken care of.
How about technology now? There's a lot happening in terms of technology, the internet, information highway, and all these things that it appears that our next generation of children may lose out on that whole process. Is there anything happening with your program over there at the Quality Life Center that is going to allow these children to interface with the growing technology that's taking place?
I think there's a beginning. We function out of the STARS complex, as you know, and the city of Fort Myers have computers in that facility. And we have people who are skilled in computer science that is now beginning to expose our young people to that computer technology. And there's a bright fellow named Bostic, who is there sharing that type of information as well. So we think that there's great opportunity.
So do you see the Quality Life Center, when you spoke of earlier about this sort of a incubator that our children can be nurtured in our own community, do you see the Quality Life Center as one or a part of this incubator that is starting to develop, that we can start to embrace our children and teach them the things that they need to know at a local level before sending them off to some school where they are exposed to injustices in many cases, and individuals don't care as much about them? I know one time my father said that no one loves black children as much as black people. Why don't you speak to that?
Well, I think that has a great deal of merit, but what I also have found in society and in my travels and in the world is that there are people of all nationalities that just simply love people. And that's important as well, because there may be people of different nationalities that can be just as inspiring. That's God's gift that he puts into human beings. However, it's important that African American children see examples before them that looks like them, that are also inspiring them, are capable and intelligent, and have a grasp of the growing sciences of today.
Absolutely. Let's talk about another thing that you've been able to stem off into. You have an extensive background, from having been in the military to working in the medical field to African American studies. But one of the things that you also get a chance to do is you get a chance to travel around to the prisons in the area, and I'm sure you've done it in other places. And you get a chance to sit down and talk to these prisoners, and in many cases, these incarcerated individuals are African Americans, the majority of them that you see when you walk through those doors. What is their reaction to you when you sit down and talk to them? How optimistic are they about their opportunities in life?
Well, I think that if you're in jail, there are a lot of people, depending upon the body of knowledge that you adopt, will determine how inspired and hopeful you may be. In jail, you find various people who have given up, and then you will find people who have been turned on by a higher power, the Creator, and they're more motivated to accomplish and achieve. And I think that that's always important. And I think that's also one of the missing links to the growth and the development, the evolution of African American children in society today, and I dare say for all children. And that is that human beings must have in their lives something to believe in that's greater than themselves. And you cannot teach in a vacuum to think that the human being will grow and advance without a healthy respect for the Creator. You have to put the healthy respect of the Creator in the life of the human being. And that respect and value and faith is what will inspire him or her to achieve and accomplish. And even if they're ignorant in many things, if they have faith, they will pursue, they will rise, they will search, they will reach up and reach out because they believe in something greater than themselves. That's the prerequisite for the success and the hope of our children and our people. And that is faith. And that's important. We cannot intellectualize it away and to act like God doesn't play a significant and important part in our lives. The Creator does. And to try to motivate and elevate our children without the respect for the Creator is it's like Sisyphus, which is the Greek mythological king, trying to get a boulder up the hill only for it to cause him to come back down again.
Okay, when you mentioned the Creator, mm-hmm. and the motivation of our children. Now, the Quality Life Center is an organization that's designed to motivate our children. Mm-hmm. Yet we mentioned early on that it is not has any religious connotation to it. Mm-hmm. That it does promote cultural awareness. Mm-hmm. How do you intermingle the two? How do you separate the two? Religion is being separated from the cultural diversity and all these other things that motivate them.
Well, we don't teach theology and we don't, quote, teach religion. However, we do acknowledge the Creator, and we are advocates of young people and all people having a healthy respect for the Creator. That doesn't mean that one is a Christian or a Jew or a Muslim. That's not where we're coming from. That's for the parent to teach their own child. But wherever I go, I'm going to always remind people that we must have a healthy respect for the Creator, whether you're a Christian, Muslim, or Jew.
Now, in recent news, the Lee County school system in particular has been discussing the idea or looking at the idea of the possibility of having within its curriculum Bible study or something as it relates to Christianity, or not necessarily Christianity, but I know you were a part of one of those meetings. Yeah. How do you feel about having Bible studies or things of that nature as a part of the school curriculum?
Mm-hmm. Well, anyone will tell you that the Bible has a great deal of value, a great deal of information, moral information that could inspire and encourage anyone. And at the same time, let us not insult our intelligence with these types of efforts. You know, I think that it's important that if we're going to teach anything in school, then it should be a world religious course that acknowledges all faiths and the contributions that all faiths and all people have made to better society, and not to try to introduce a strategy of implementing a particular theology where it may be offensive to other children. So I think the best approach is to respect people of all faiths and share the wealth and the value of all religions.
Now, do you think that type of approach to this particular form of the curriculum where it teaches religion, do you think that diverse form of an approach could be achieved? Do you think that could get cumbersome?
The example that I just shared,
That's right.
No, I think that it would be very appropriate. I think you cannot teach world history without including the contributions made by the Buddhists, by the Hindu, by the Christian, the Muslims, the Jews, and other faiths. I mean, that's just pure intelligence. And it's because of our ignorance of other cultures and other people and other religions that cause the conflict that we see in the world among humanity today. If we have knowledge of each other, if we know each other, we will tend to get along with each other and respect one another.
Mr. Muhammad, Abdul, I must say that this interview has been wonderful. We're getting down to like our last 2 minutes, so we'll go over a couple of high points, and I'll let you elaborate on them as quickly as possible. Let's talk about where you see the Quality Life Center going in the coming years here in this area.
Well, Quality Life Center, as you know, Lee, is very committed. We're committed to the development, the upliftment of not only youth, but their families. And the more you work with youth, the more we realize that the family is in need as well. And so our efforts is to address the needs of the entire family and the entire community. We would hope to expand upon the programs that we have and create positive and motivating environments for young people, and to be there as a process by which we could get young people through life and life struggles and problems in order to reach the goals that they may have in their lives, may it be college or vocational training or some type of employment or business, whatever their interest is. So we see ourselves a part of that entire process.
Well, again, as the saying goes, time certainly does fly when you're having fun. I'd like to thank you for joining us here in this Black History Profile.
Praise be to God.
And we'd like to definitely get you back on the show in the future and continue the good work, because you're certainly a role model in our community.
Well, we appreciate your work, brother.
All right, thank you very much. Those who just joined us, we were sitting here talking to Mr. Abdul Muhammed. He's the director of the Quality Life Center, and he's been included in the Up Close Black History Profile.